Hi, I'm Linda Williams.
And I'm Thomas E. Jordan.
And I'm Dan Williams, and welcome to Harambee.
Hello.
Hey, brother. How are you?
Fine,
Good to see you again.
Hi, Brother Michael.
Got another song?
Yes. Song you'll sing. I want you to sing with me. Come gather around me, people. I got a song to sing about the life and legends of a man called Martin Luther King. That Martin Luther King was born to a sharecropper's son. All the bigots hated him. He never owned a gun. I've been to the mountaintop. There I have a dream. Don't you ever forget the words of Martin Luther King. Had a bus line in Montgomery. Had some folks sitting in the back. Wasn't no coincidence that all these people was black. That Martin Luther King put a boycott on that town. Let's march with our people, and he closed the bus line down. I've been to the mountaintop, there I have a dream. Don't you ever forget the words of Martin Luther King. He preached and lived nonviolence until the very end. In a hotel banquet in Memphis, mankind lost his best friend. He fought for human rights as he rode from town to town. That's what he was doing in Memphis when some darn fool shot him down. I've been to the mountaintop, there I have a dream. Don't you ever forget the words of Martin Luther King. There's a sickness in this nation, and it seemed to be obviously clear when they kill a man with hate because he would not die from fear. It's time for you to take a look at the mirror on that wall. Did you pull that trigger? Or were you there at all? And I've been to the mountaintop, there I have a dream. Don't you ever forget the words of Martin Luther King.
You have just heard a moving but simple ballad concerning the life of the late Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr., as sung by the Reverend Frederick Kirkpatrick. And we would like to thank Reverend Kirkpatrick and the producers of Sesame Street for making this part of the tape accessible for Harambee.
Linda and Danny, and to all of our listeners and watchers of Harambee, in January we did a special memorial on the life and works of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr., and we received quite a bit of response of appreciation for such a program, and we thought that this being near April the 4th, we would redo that special on Dr. King, and tonight on Harambee we will be seeing interviews with Dr. Ralph David Abernathy, who serves as president of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference and who is the successor to the late Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr.
Going right along, we have a Black Heritage segment about Martin Luther King. It's a pictorial account of some of the things the man had to go through, along with many others. But in particular, the things that Martin Luther King had to face, that he did face with his head up, looking straight ahead, and some of his immortal words from the I Have a Dream speech, which some feel was sort of the turning point for Martin Luther King to become a little bit more active, not exactly militant, but trying to accomplish a little bit more in a more active way for his people. And just listen to him and look at these pictures, and you will find that it is a very moving segment.
Precious Lord, take my hand, lead
me on, let me stand. I am tired, I am weak, I am worn through the storm, through the night. Lead me on to the light. Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me on. When my way grows dreary, precious Lord, linger near. When my life is almost gone, hear my cry, hear my call, guide my feet, lest I fall. Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me on.
Those were the words to a famous spiritual that Martin Luther King Jr. requested before his untimely death in Memphis on April 4, 1968. If it had not been for Mrs. Rosa Parks, the world might never have heard of Martin Luther King Jr. Mrs. Parks was arrested for refusing to yield her bus seat to a white man, and her arrest altered Dr. King's destiny. Outraged at Mrs. Parks's arrest, the black community organized the Montgomery Improvement Association and elected King as its president. The Montgomery Improvement Association staged a massive bus boycott which lasted 381 days and resulted in a desegregated bus system. The victory was the first in the current civil rights movement and King's first step toward becoming its spokesman. Dr. King later formed the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, with nonviolence in principle and practice being the basic beliefs. Dr. King led nonviolent protests all over the nation, disregarding his own safety. He never wavered from a basic belief that love was a most powerful weapon. But perhaps he preached it most eloquently in this excerpt from a speech.
So even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. Yes. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day Even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream. My poor little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day, down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification. One day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. That one day every valley shall be exalted, and every hill and mountain shall be made low. The rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is a faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with new meaning, "My country, tears of thee. Sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. And so let freedom ring. From the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire, let freedom ring. From the mighty mountains of New York, let freedom ring. From the heightening Alleghanies of Pennsylvania, let freedom ring. From the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado, let freedom ring. From the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi, from every mountainside. Let freedom ring, and when this happens, when we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, "Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last."
Dr. King's courage won the admiration of people all over the world. In 1964, it brought him the Nobel Prize for Peace. In the end, Dr. King was the victim of the very violence he abhorred. His eyes had seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. His dream is marching on. Martin Luther King's death, his family wanted his work to live on. The Martin Luther King Memorial Center, located in Atlanta, Georgia, was established to be a living memorial to the civil rights leader. It is both a hope and a concrete, exciting reality. It is a combination of scholarly and historic endeavors. Organized since the fall of 1968, the library project, now open to the public, is now collecting the papers, tapes, and other materials of Dr. King, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and other individuals and organizations involved in the civil rights movement. It is simply the story of a struggle. Hundreds of thousands of pages of material are ready in the archives. It has rapidly expanded its scope towards becoming a major center for the post-1954 freedom movement. This center is a living memorial which says that King lives and always live in the hearts of men and women who hunger and thirst after liberation and peace and social justice in this world.
Tom spoke with Reverend Ralph David Abernathy, who at the time was Secretary-Treasurer of the SCLC when Martin Luther King was head of it, and who now serves as president of the SCLC. And Abernathy, Reverend Abernathy, had some very touching things to say, and it showed just how close, how necessary, and how much he loved Martin Luther King in this interview, not only as just a partner in this work for his people, but as a friend and a companion.
Dr. Abernathy, I know for myself that you are your own man, but how do you feel when so many people try to compare you to Dr. Martin Luther King?
Well, I must say that I think that this is unfair to try and compare me with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I know that Dr. King would not want this done. He said so often while living that he could not do the things that he was doing without me, and I know that I could not have done the things that I did without him. Each of us had a job to do, and we were separate and distinct personalities. I think that he did his job well, and as long as he was alive, I was with him. I stood with him. I tried to back him up and support him as our leader. And he was a marvelous leader, a great man, the most peaceful warrior of the 20th century. But now that Dr. King is no longer with us, I am not trying to fill Dr. King's shoes. Dr. King filled his own shoes, and there is no man living, dead, or unborn who can fill the shoes of Martin Luther King Jr. But I also want the record to show that I have some sandals of my own, and I'm going to wear them until they fall apart.
Dr. Abernathy, just what was April the 4th, 1968 like for you in Memphis, Tennessee?
Well, the day began as a very beautiful and wonderful day because we had a staff meeting that day, and the vast majority of the staff of SCLC was present in Memphis, and it was a very relaxed staff meeting. Someone made a suggestion that we employ one of the young men who was responsible for the violence that had erupted the week prior to this day in Memphis. And Dr. King became very disturbed And he said, we could not employ anyone or employ anyone who would use violence as a strategy or as a tactic in achieving our goal. And then he turned to me and looked me dead in the eyes and he said, Ralph, I want to hold you responsible and I want to charge you to see to it that never at no time will the Southern Christian Leadership Conference employ anyone who will use violence as a tactic or as a strategy in achieving our goals. I thought he was speaking to me because I was a treasurer of the organization and responsible for the payroll. And I merely passed it up by saying yes. I said, let's make that promise to him. So finally, the meeting closed and we ordered lunch. And strangely enough, we never could get over to the waitress that we wanted lunch for 2 individuals. She brought 2 orders of fish on the same plate. And this caused Dr. King and I to have our last meal together. And when I became aggravated with the waitress, he said, that's all right, Ralph. We can eat from the same plate. And we had our last meal together. And then after a nap, we prepared to go out to dinner. And once he had finished shaving, I guess the experience that I remember most was the fact that we were mapping strategy to go to Washington for the Poor People's Campaign. And I said to him, I did not bring it up in the meeting, Martin, but I can't go to Washington that week because I have a revival service planned for my church. And he turned to me and he said, Ralph, you know I would not think of going to Washington without you. He said, what I want you to do is to go to the West 100th Street Baptist Church and tell those people that you have a greater revival. You have a revival that's going to revive the soul of this nation. He said, I know that they will believe you. He said, you must go to Washington on that week. And strangely enough, I didn't know that we were in our last conversation together. He said, are you ready to go to dinner now? And I said, yes. And he got his coat and he walked out on the balcony in front of me. And the fatal shot entered his body. And I, of course, was down seeking to see what had happened to him and to console him. And when he could no longer speak to me with his lips, he spoke to me with his eyes. And I could hear him say, for God's sake, Ralph, don't you let me down, but keep all of those promises that you have made me and do the things that I've asked you to do. He was very much conscious, and I rode to the hospital with him. I stayed in the operating room. I committed civil disobedience. I would not go out. I was there when he breathed his last breath. I was there when he died.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now but now I see.
That moving rendition of Amazing Grace was done by Roy Hicks, director of the Tuskegee Institute Choir, and I really think he did justice to one of Martin Luther King's favorite songs.
And I guess it tells us in a way that we really have a ample field to plow in terms of trying to make Dr. King's dream come true.
Right.
Right, Tom?
You know, I think very seriously about, well, this year being the 4th year since Dr. King has been dead. And I wonder, really, America has a tendency to react when a tragic situation happens with some emergency programs and throws out all of its feelings, and maybe after a short time, it returns to business as usual, you know. And I really wonder if Martin Luther King Jr. has truly, really meant anything for America. I wonder about that as we have experienced this presentation tonight. That's what's on my mind.
Well, this is really for us to try to find out and really to try to do concerning, because his dream is your dream, is our dream, and what we can do. And I think you'll agree with me, and if you do, you should write us here at Harambee, because his truth is marching on and we have to move on. And talking about this dream and what we can do, well, we have to give credit to those who really helped us with this program this evening. Our project directors, Dudley Williams and Jim Stone. Our producers, David McAllister and Ray Lakes. Our production crew, Bruce Little, Percy Ross, Richard Carlisle, and Harold Ledbetter. Our art director, Jim Sellers, and our engineer, Bobby Chandler. Harambee is an Auburn Television production. So from Tom, Linda, and myself, or do you have something to say?
No, I just wanted to tell them to be sure to watch next week.
Next week.
To
Okay.
Harambee.
Minor support funds for Harambee provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.